I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now and listen to me because what I am about to tell you is the kind of thing that changes a person permanently, the kind of thing that splits your life cleanly into before and after. And I have never spoken these words out loud to a single human being, not to my sister Carol, who has known me for 60 years, not to my pastor, not to the therapist I drove 40 minutes each way to see every Thursday for 2 years. My name is Margaret Collins. Everyone who loves me calls me Maggie. I am 60 years old. I have crow's feet I earned through decades of squinting at hospital charts under fluorescent lights. I have grey in my hair that I stopped colouring 18 months ago because I decided that a woman who has survived what I have survived deserves to wear her proof openly. I raised my daughter Vanessa completely alone after her father Raymond walked out when she was 4 years old and never once looked back. No child support, no birthday calls, no nothing. I worked double shifts at Mercy General Hospital for 11 years. 11 years of compression socks and cafeteria coffee and driving home at midnight so exhausted I once pulled into the wrong driveway and sat there for 3 full minutes before I realized it. I missed school plays. So I missed her first homecoming dance because I could not get someone to cover my shift. I missed things I think about at 2 in the morning when the house is quiet and the missing has nowhere to hide. And I told myself every single time, it is worth it. I am building something for her. One day she will understand everything I gave. One day Vanessa will look at me and see all of it. She saw all of it. And what she chose to do with that knowledge cracked me open in a way I did not know a 60-year-old woman could be cracked and still drive to the pharmacy, still water her plants, still smile at the cashier who does not know that the woman buying oatmeal and blood pressure medication is barely keeping herself assembled. It was a Tuesday in October. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had just come back from my cardiologist, Dr. Anand, who told me my blood pressure was dangerously high and that I needed to eliminate stress from my life immediately. I almost laughed in that exam room. I wanted to say, "Sir, stress is the paint on every wall of my house." I drove home on the 285 thinking about dinner. Thinking I would call Vanessa because we had not spoken in 3 weeks, and that hollow ache was starting again, that specific loneliness that only exists between a mother and a child who has grown distant in ways you cannot name or explain. Vanessa is 32 years old. She lives in Marietta, just outside Atlanta, with her boyfriend Derek, a man I have met exactly 4 times in 2 years. I texted her first. I said I had been to the doctor and I was thinking about her. She did not reply for 6 hours. 6 hours of silence had become the normal rhythm of us ever since Derek, ever since she started pulling away in ways I kept making excuses for. She is busy, she is building her life, she just needs space. All the gentle lies a mother tells herself when she cannot stand to look directly at what is actually happening. That Tuesday evening, just after 8 o'clock, Vanessa called me back, and I lit up. I genuinely lit up the way I used to when she was 7 years old and would come running through the front door shouting, "Mama, Mama, I have something to tell you." I picked up that phone like it was a gift. I said, "Baby, I am so glad you called." She was quiet for a moment, not the comfortable quiet of someone gathering good news, the weighted quiet that presses against your eardrums and sends a cold signal down your spine before your brain even processes why. She said, "Mom, I have been thinking about what I want for my birthday next month," and I said, "Oh, sweetheart, tell me everything, I want to make it special." I was already thinking flowers. I was already thinking about flying down to Marietta, taking her to that Italian place she loves, surprising her with the pottery class she had mentioned wanting to try. I was in full Maggie Collins mother mode, already pouring myself into the shape of her happiness, already disappearing into the project of making Vanessa feel loved, which is what I had done for 32 years without once stopping to ask what it was costing me. She took a breath, and she said, "Honestly, Mom, the greatest gift you could give me would be if you just died. I want you to feel what those 11 words felt like landing in the body of a 60-year-old woman who had spent 3 decades in complete service of the person who just said them. I want you to try to understand what it feels like when the floor dissolves while you are standing completely still in your own kitchen, the one you have cooked 10,000 meals in. The one where you used to stand at the stove at midnight after a double shift making Vanessa's lunch for the next day because you refused to let her go to school with cafeteria food if you could help it. I did not scream, I did not cry. I said nothing for so long that she actually said, "Mom, are you there?" And something in me, some very old and very tired part of me, said simply, "Yes, I am here," and then I said, "I have to go," and I hung up. And I sat down on that kitchen floor, right there on the tile, and I did not move for 45 minutes. I replay that moment constantly, not because I choose to. The mind does not ask permission about which memories it keeps on rotation. And I had spent so much of my life folding pain into drawers. My grief when Raymond left, my exhaustion during the double shift years, my loneliness when Vanessa went to college and the calls got shorter and further apart. My confusion as she became someone I recognized less and less, all of it, folded, labeled, stored, but you cannot fold something like what Vanessa said into any drawer, it refuses to fit. It takes up every inch of space inside you and it will not be quiet until you deal with it. What happened next is the part nobody expects. I got up off the floor after 45 minutes. I washed my face with cold water. I made chamomile tea. And I sat in my chair by the window, the one where I have watched the same oak tree change seasons for 14 years, and I asked myself one question, not what did I do wrong, not how do I fix this, not how do I make Vanessa love me again. I ask myself what is true, what is actually completely undeniably true right now, and I sat with that question all night, because the answer was about to change everything for Vanessa and for me. And for the $54,000 sitting in a savings account that she did not yet know I was about to redirect completely. If you think you know what I did next, I promise you, you do not. Stay with me. What is true is this. For 6 years of saying no to myself, of skipping vacations, of driving a 2016 Honda, with 212,000 miles on it, while my Medicare supplemental plan ate $300 a month. And I smiled and told myself it was fine. I had been building a gift for Vanessa. $54,000. I had $54,000 in a savings account at Wells Fargo that I had built one paycheck at a time, one skipped purchase at a time, one quiet sacrifice at a time. And the plan I had been holding in my chest like a lamp, through all the months of short conversations and long silences, was to transfer that money to Vanessa on her 33rd birthday, so she and Derek could put a down payment on the house they had been looking at in a suburb of Marietta. That was the birthday gift. That was what Maggie Collins had been building toward. The morning after she said what she said, I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee, and I let myself be completely honest in a way I had not been honest in years. I had been using that money as a tether. Not manipulatively, not with any conscious cruelty, but the way a woman who is terrified of being abandoned uses whatever she has to stay necessary. I was afraid of losing Vanessa, the way I had already lost Raymond. And the $54,000 felt like proof that she still needed me, that there was still a reason for her to keep me in her life. I was not coming to that gift entirely from love. I was also coming from fear. And fear builds things that look like love from the outside, but collapse the moment real weight is applied. So that morning I did something I had never done before in 60 years of living. I did not call Vanessa back. I did not text her an explanation or an apology or a gentle opening for her to walk back what she said. I called my sister Carol in Cincinnati instead, and I told her everything. The phone call, the words, the kitchen floor, all of it. Carol was silent for a long time. Then she said, "Maggie, what are you going to do?" And I said, "I am going to do something I should have done a long time ago. I am going to choose myself." That afternoon I drove to Wells Fargo. I sat across from a young woman named Ashley, who had no idea that the 60-year-old lady in front of her was in the process of reclaiming her entire life. I moved the $54,000, not to Vanessa. I split it 3 ways. $30,000 into a retirement account I had been deferring for 15 years because I was always putting Vanessa first. $15,000 into a health savings account because Dr. Anand had made it clear that my body was presenting a bill I could no longer postpone. And $9,000 into a separate personal account I labelled right there in Ashley's office, with the word Maggie in capital letters. For the first time in my adult life, I had an account that existed solely and completely for me. Then I went home and I wrote Vanessa a letter. Not an email, a letter on paper with a pen.
because some truths deserve the gravity of handwriting. I did not yell at her in that letter. I did not list everything I had done for 32 years, though God knows the inventory was long. I did not make her feel guilty, though the raw material was absolutely there. I said simply, "Vanessa, I heard what you said. I have thought about it through the night and through this morning. I want you to know that I love you. And I want you to know that I will not be providing the house funding, not as punishment, but because I have realized that I was offering something I had not healed enough to offer cleanly. I need time. I hope you will respect that." I signed it Margaret Collins. Not Mom. My full name, as a whole person, not just a role. I mailed it Thursday morning, and then, and this is the part that still surprises me when I think about it, I packed a bag. One bag. The medium-sized navy blue roller I had bought for a work conference in 2019 and used exactly once. I booked a flight, not to visit family. Not for anything practical or responsible or justifiable in the way I had always required my choices to be justifiable. I booked a flight to Portugal. A country I had wanted to see since I was 35 years old and had always told myself was not the right time, not practical, not yet, maybe next year. Next year had become 25 years of waiting. I was done waiting. I told Carol where I was going. I set my phone so that only Carol could reach me in an emergency, and I got on a plane. What I found on the other side of that flight was something I have struggled to describe to anyone who has not experienced it. The specific feeling of being in a place where nobody knows your name, nobody knows your history. Nobody needs anything from you, and you are free, for the first time in longer than you can remember, to simply exist as yourself. I walked streets in Lisbon I had never walked. I ate meals alone at small tables and did not feel ashamed of being alone. I sat in a square and listened to music and did not check my phone. I was Maggie Collins, 60 years old, grey hair and bunions and cardiologist's warnings. And I was just there, alive, present, taking up space in the world without apologizing for it. It was the most extraordinary thing I had experienced since the night Vanessa was born, which is a strange comparison. But both moments had the same quality, the quality of becoming real to myself in a way I had not been before. I was gone for 11 days, and every single one of those days I thought about Vanessa, not with anxiety, not with the desperate monitoring I had done for years, scanning every text for signs of distance, measuring her warmth in degrees. I thought about her the way you think about someone you genuinely love, with softness, with history, with grief for what had been damaged, but without the drowning weight of making it my emergency to fix. I thought about who she was as a little girl, the specific, particular, irreplaceable person she had been at 7, at 12, at 17. I thought about how children who grow up with one exhausted parent sometimes develop a complicated relationship with that parent's love. Because the love and the sacrifice and the exhaustion are all braided together and impossible for a child to separate cleanly. I thought about wounds that pass through families like heirlooms. Not given on purpose, not given with cruelty, but given nonetheless. On the 7th night I sat outside and looked at the sky over the water and I cried. Not the frozen floor-sitting cry of the night. Vanessa said what she said. Something older. Something that had been waiting decades for permission. I cried for 28-year-old Maggie, alone with a newborn, terrified and furious, and so in love it physically hurt. I cried for every midnight drive home, from Mercy General with my eyes burning. I cried for every conversation I had postponed having with Vanessa because I was too tired, because I thought there was time. Because I believed the love was so large and so obvious it did not need to be said out loud, as often as it needed to be said. And then, slowly, on that 7th night I let it go. Not permanently, not without grief, but enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to come home differently than I had left.
When I came back to my house in Decatur, there were 2 voicemails from Vanessa. I did not listen to them for 2 days. I know how that sounds. I know someone reading this right now is thinking, 2 days? What kind of mother waits 2 days? But here is what I have learned at 60 that I did not know at 30. Being available is not the same thing as being present. You can answer every call and reply to every text and show up to every event and still be so emptied out that what you are offering is a performance of a mother with no real person left inside it. I had been performing Maggie Collins, good mother, for a very long time. I needed 2 days before I could hear Vanessa's voice and respond from my actual self,
rather than from the automated, reflexive, self-erasing version of me that had been running on default settings for most of my adult life. When I finally listened, she was crying. Not performance crying. I have known Vanessa's voice for 32 years. I know every register of it, and this was not a sound designed to move me. This was a young woman who had received a handwritten letter from her mother, signed with a full name instead of Mom, and had been alone with what that meant for 11 days. She said she was sorry. She said she did not mean it the way it came out. She said she had been going through something very dark, and she had taken it out on me, and she knew that was not okay. She said she had been thinking about everything I had done, everything I had actually done across 32 years. And she felt sick. She said, "Please call me back." I sat with those voicemails for 2 more days, because here is what I know about apologies that took me most of my life to understand. An apology is a door opening, not a room being cleaned. What matters is not the apology itself, but whether both people are willing to walk through that door and deal with what is actually inside the room. I had spent decades accepting apologies as endings, resetting to zero, pretending nothing had happened, and watching in slow motion as the same patterns returned because nothing underneath had ever changed. I was not going to do that this time. I called Vanessa back on a Saturday morning. I made my coffee first. I sat in my chair by the window. I breathed 3 slow breaths the way my therapist had taught me years ago, not to calm down but to arrive, to be fully in my body before entering a conversation that required all of me to be present. She picked up on the second ring. She started apologizing immediately, and I said, "Vanessa, honey, I hear your apology and I am holding it, but I need us to do something harder than apologize today. I need us to actually talk." And we did. We talked for 3 hours and 14 minutes. I know because my phone logged it and I looked afterward, somehow needing to see the number. It was the longest real conversation Vanessa and I had shared since she was 17, and we used to argue about everything until midnight, and it was exhausting and infuriating and utterly alive in a way our recent conversations had not been. She told me things I had not known. About Derek and how the relationship had been making her miserable for over a year, and how she had stayed because she was afraid of being alone the way she had watched me be alone. And how that fear of loneliness had been passed to her from me, like something in the bloodstream. About the resentment she had been carrying toward me. Not because I had done nothing, but because of how she had sometimes experienced my doing. The way she could feel, under my giving, the weight of my need. The way my sacrifices had sometimes felt to her like a debt she had not agreed to carry. The way she had sometimes wished, in her worst moments, that I had chosen myself a little more and her a little less, because then maybe she would have learned earlier that it was allowed. I listened to every word without interrupting. I did not defend myself, though parts of me burned to. I did not diminish her experience, though parts of me wanted to remind her of every midnight and every missed birthday and every dollar I had counted to make sure she had enough. And when she was finished, I spoke. I told her about the fear underneath my giving. I told her about Raymond's leaving, and how it had made me desperate to be irreplaceable to her, in a way that was not entirely healthy for either of us. I told her that the $54,000 had not been entirely selfless, that some part of me had been buying reassurance that she still needed me. I told her how much I loved her, not the performance of it, not the scorekeeping version, but the actual thing. The thing that had been there since the moment they laid her on my chest in that delivery room at Grady Hospital 32 years ago, and I looked at her face and understood for the first time what it meant to love something more than your own life. She cried. I cried. It was not clean or neat or cinematic. It was 2 women who love each other enormously and have hurt each other in ways that are real, trying to look at the truth without flinching away from it. It was the most important conversation of my entire life. More important than telling Raymond to leave, more important than any of it, because it was the first conversation Vanessa and I had ever had where neither of us was performing. Where we were just Maggie and Vanessa, complicated, real, trying. At the end of that call, Vanessa asked about the house, about Derek and the down payment and what was going to happen, and I said, I have already made my decision about the money. And I am at peace with it, and I will explain it to you in person. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay, Mom." And something in that "okay" The steadiness of it, the lack of argument, told me that something had genuinely shifted between us. That she was not the same Vanessa who had said those words to me on a Tuesday evening, and I was not the same Maggie who had sat on a kitchen floor unable to move. 3 weeks later I drove to Marietta. I let myself into the apartment. Vanessa had given me a key months ago, a gesture I had cherished perhaps too visibly. She was not home yet from work. I put a letter on her kitchen table. Then I sat on her couch and I waited.
When Vanessa walked through the door and saw me sitting there, she stopped. She looked at the letter on the table. She looked at me. She picked it up and she sat down in the chair across from me and she read it. I watched her face the entire time. I watched it move through things. First confusion, then a slow kind of shock, then something that briefly looked like it might become anger, and then something much quieter, much slower. Something that took a long time to arrive, but when it arrived it was unmistakable. It looked like respect, the particular respect that is different from love, that does not come automatically with blood relation, that has to be earned through actions that are difficult and real. In that letter I told Vanessa the full accounting. Not as accusation, as truth. The kind of complete, unflinching truth that says, here is everything that was real between us. Here is what I gave, and why I gave it. Here is where I got it wrong. Here is what I will not apologize for, and here is who I am choosing to be from this point forward. I told her about the three-way split. 30,000 into the retirement account I had been delaying for 15 years. 15,000 into the health savings account for the medical reality that Dr. Anand had made clear was coming and that I could no longer postpone tending to. And 9,000 into the account I had labelled Maggie, already used in part for 11 days in Portugal that had returned something to me I had not known was missing. I told her that the down payment on the Marietta house would not be coming from me, not because I did not love her, but because I had finally understood that a gift given from fear is not a gift. It is a transaction, and the terms are always unclear, and someone always ends up paying more than they agreed to. I told her that she and Derek, or she alone, or she with whoever came next, were capable of building what they needed on their own. That the process of doing it themselves would give them something I could not buy for them. That I believed in her ability to do hard things because I had watched her be made, partially, from the hardest years of my life. She put the letter down. She looked at me for a long time, and then Vanessa said something I have not stopped thinking about since that afternoon in her Marietta apartment. She said, "Mom, I think this is the first time in my life I have seen you choose yourself." I said yes. She said, "It's a little terrifying." I said, "I know." She said, "I think I needed to see it." I said, "I think I needed to do it. We are not a fixed story. I want to be honest with you about that. We are not a before and after. We are not a reconciliation with a bow on it." Vanessa and Derek broke up 4 months after that afternoon. She called me when it happened. She called me first, and that phone call meant more to me than I know how to say. She is in a smaller apartment now, on her own, figuring things out, and when I talk to her she sounds more like herself than she has in years. She told me last month that she has started therapy. She said her therapist wants to talk about patterns she inherited. I said, "Tell her," I said, "good luck." Vanessa laughed, really laughed, the specific laugh I have been hearing since she was 3 years old, and for a moment we were just us again. Maggie and Vanessa, not a wound, not a dynamic, just a mother and her daughter trying. My blood pressure is down. Dr. Anand asked what changed and I told him I put down something very heavy. He said, "Whatever it is, keep it down." I have a retirement account with actual money in it. I have a health savings account I no longer feel guilty for using, and I have the Maggie account, which has already taken me to Lisbon and will take me somewhere else before the year is out. I am thinking the coast of Maine in the fall, somewhere with a porch and the sound of water, and a book I have no reason to rush through. I joined a group that meets every other Tuesday at a community centre 12 minutes from my house. Not a support group exactly. More of a gathering of women between 55 and 70 who drink decent coffee and tell each other the truth about their lives without performing for anyone. I have made 2 friends there who know the complete version of everything I have told you, and a few things I have not. At 60. To make a real friend, the kind who knows your whole story and stays anyway, is one of the finest things that can happen to a person. I had forgotten that was still available to me. I want to speak directly to you now. Not as a woman who has it figured out. I do not. Not as someone who handled everything perfectly. I did not. But as Maggie Collins, 60 years old, grey hair, bunions, retirement account. Portugal stamps in a passport that spent 20 years in a drawer. Speaking plainly to whoever found this story, if your child has said something to you that broke something inside you, I want you to know, you are allowed to let it break. You do not have to immediately reassemble yourself into the helpful, available, self-erasing version of the person they have come to expect. The breaking is not the end. Sometimes the breaking is the beginning of the only honest thing that was ever going to happen between you. If you have been giving from fear and calling it love, you are not a bad person. You are a person who was afraid. Fear is not shameful, but fear is a terrible architect. The structures it builds look like love from a distance and fall apart when weight is applied. You can choose to build differently. It is not too late. At 60, I am evidence that it is not too late. If you have $54,000, or $5,000, or $500, or whatever number represents the thing you have been saving, to give someone else, while quietly postponing yourself, I want to ask you one question. When is the last time that number had your name on it? When is the last time you were the person the gift was for? You are allowed to be the person the gift is for. You were always allowed. Someone just forgot to tell you, and you forgot to ask. And the years went by the way years do, quietly, quickly, without announcing themselves. And here we are. Here you are. Whatever age you are right now, here you are. And it is not too late to put your own name on something. Not too late to get on the plane. Not too late to have the honest conversation. Not too late to sign the letter with your full name and mean it. I am Maggie Collins. I am 60 years old. I cancelled the funding. I moved the money. I got on the plane. I sat across from my daughter and told her the truth and let her tell me hers. I am not the woman who sat on that kitchen floor unable to move. I am the woman who got up. And if you are waiting for someone to tell you that you are allowed to get up too, consider this your letter. Consider this the thing I am leaving on your table. Now go.